Hey guys, welcome back to Let's Play Star Ocean Second Story. Last time, we finished up both paths moving forward to basically this point. Now, if you recall at the end of the last episode, based on how I've edited things together, you should have seen that as we arrived in town on either path, we had a slightly different change. On Claude's path, he gets left to his own devices and he's by himself. On Rena's path, they're both together and we do a tour of the entire area. For whatever reason the game likes to do this, I'm not really sure why they make subtle changes like this in the timeline, but it doesn't really matter. Now, before we get into detail about what's going on around here, we can talk to everybody, it really doesn't matter, but I'm going to pick up the treasure and talk to a couple of people just to show what we're doing. A blueberry, just like in all other Star Ocean games, I think it's 30% of your maximum HP. It just restores it. Rose hips are for compounding. There's a lot of item creation in this game. We will do that later. That was the name of the planet he disappeared from, so he's asking about that. And he's asking about spaceships on an underdeveloped planet because apparently he's an idiot. But anyway, speaking of item creation, that brings me to the menu, the camp menu. So specialties, let's just go over some of this now because we really have to get into this. The specialties just leads to what are called killer moves or specialties or moves or techs or whatever you want to call them. Items leads to the item menu, which is horribly disorganized in this game. We'll get into that later. Equipment, we have none. Now, if you think about this, when we fought on Claude's path and went in and talked to, or tried to fight that enemy, I swung a sword that I don't actually have, which is very amusing to me. We'll skip skills for now. Status. Yes, status. Look at all the things on there. Most of them don't really make a lot of sense. What's con? Conscience? I don't know. Well, I think... Well, not I think. It represents your basic defense rating. Strength is obviously your physical attack power. Con, or AC, you notice how they're side by side there? That is your defense. I'm not sure why it has two different values, but it does. Your dexterity is your hit percentage, as well as the hit stat. Again, there's two, I don't know. Agility and evade are the same. They are your... or avoid is basically it's your evade. Intelligence and magic are the same. I read somewhere that your intelligence on all characters starts at 0. Do note that Claude is level 2, so that's probably why he has 2 to that. Luck has a small influence on a lot of things, from your basic stats, critical chance, how often guts comes into play, and I'll talk about that in a moment, as well as slightly influencing item creation, which, like, I've seen people say that it does all these things. I've seen people say that it does nothing. You can't really raise it by all that much in this game, so it really doesn't matter anyway. STM is stamina. Stamina in this game works like it does in all the other Star Ocean games. If you want to recover HP and MP after battle, you need higher stamina. So we want to get our stamina up very quickly so that we don't run out of MP, because MP is really needed a lot in this game. Guts does a number of different things. It works with our some of our skills that affect things in battle, which allow us to do more damage, ignore defense. It also allows us to take less damage based on chance. Same with the other two, doing more damage, it's based on chance. It also has a chance to prevent you from being knocked out. If you would have normally been knocked out, say you have 20 HP left, the attack would have done 30. Based on a chance of guts, it might kick in and you'll stay alive with 1 HP. This happens in the other Star Ocean games as well. It's a pretty cool thing to have in there. Again, higher guts is a good thing. Options, we can speed that up. Yeah, that'll make life easier. Let's see here. Targeting. Your targeting mode, we chose this at the beginning of the game, but it really didn't matter because we can change all 3 individual aspects, which are these ones, whenever we want. So combat motion mode, basically either you can target specific enemies and then move around by holding down square and then moving around on the joystick or the D-pad, or you can just have it so you can move around as freely as you want with just the D-pad. I'm going to go with just the D-pad because that's easier for me. Targeting mode, basically auto will just target whoever's closest to you. Semi-auto, I think, does very much the same thing, and manual selects you have to individually target. But the battles are real time in this game and they don't pause when you do that. So I just set mine to auto, and then if I want to target somebody else, I'll run close to that enemy. Camera work, I usually leave on leader centered, but I've heard it is one of the reasons why when another character casts a spell, the camera will bounce back to the spellcaster instead of focusing on the character that you're trying to actually use in battle. So I'm going to put that in normal this time. It doesn't really matter. Here's your basic keys. Pretty much does what you would expect it to do. You have 2 killer moves that you can set up in the game, R1 and L1. You can change your characters in battle by hitting L2, and you can switch their targeting, or well, not their no, I did not want to do that. I wanted to cancel. It's one thing I don't like about the menu in there. You press circle to cancel, and then you can't cancel because you're changing button assignments. Anyway, but what it will do is it will change the strategy, which will go from any one of these, most of them kind of stupid, to do nothing. Basically, it turns their combat AI from whatever it is to manual, so you can basically stop them from doing anything. That's all it really does. It really doesn't matter. As far as strategies go, most of them are pretty self-explanatory. The one you're going to have on most of your fighters all game long is probably attack with all MP, unless they're using too much, in which case you'll just put it onto this, and then they'll only use it once in a while instead of too often. There's other ones for mages, but it's not particularly important. Replacement, you can replace characters. You have to have a character in your active party, otherwise you're not fighting anything. But other than that, there is a formation, which doesn't really matter at all. We'll find this out, what this looks like, when we actually get some characters. Data you can save at save points, and on the world map you can load at any point, which is very useful, specifically in this game because of all the item creation we're going to be doing. Speaking of item creation, skills. Now, there are some skills here already that we normally don't have access to. Each character comes in with their own skill set already at the start of the game, and that will allow us to, well, that individual character is going to have access to certain skills before we can normally get access to all of them. And I'll go into that more when we actually start to do that. But more importantly, when you go into the skill menu, you press a triangle button. It'll show you how far along you are working on certain item creation skills. Press it again, and it'll show you your talents. Your talents are very important in this game, and basically are the only way you're able to do specific things. Now, whoever your lead character is, whether it's Claude or whether it's Rena, make absolutely certain that they have the dexterity talent. I think Rena gets it almost every time. Claude does not. He usually gets writing, but he gets some other ones too. Basically, he wants dexterity. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. Whoever your main character is must get dexterity. Otherwise, you will be sorry. I promise you this. Okay. That aside, I've specifically mapped out, and hopefully this works, who I want to use which item creation skill, because we only have a limited number of skill points, and so I don't want one character to try and do all of them, so I'm going to split them out to 4 or 5 different characters. In this particular case, I wanted Claude to have both dexterity and originality, and as long as he had those, I was fine. He doesn't need to have anything else. That's with him as the lead. It doesn't really matter if you're just playing casually, but for me, trying to optimize things for the LP, that's what I wanted him to have set up. Now, your characters will randomly get different talents at the start of the game. They don't always get the same ones. So if they don't get the ones you want, you go like, you go and either load to your last save point, or you reset if it's the first character you get. Basically, you'll be able to find these out as soon as you gain control of your characters. In Claude's case, you'll get that at that other planet that he was on, where he teleported away from. He gets control of them there. Go into the menu, check it there. If it doesn't work, reload, try again. In Rena's case, she'll pop out of her house and she'll stand right about here, and then you'll gain control of her literally like a minute in. So you just go in the menu and you check her stats. Make sure she has dexterity. She usually does. Just make sure she has that in the case of her playthrough as well. If not, I'm going to specifically focus on getting certain talents for certain characters throughout, and I will probably mention them as we go. Anyway, long story short, we don't really need to talk to most of the people with Claude's path. So in order to trigger the next scene, we need to walk into her house. However, they mismatch parts of scenes here and there, and to make a more complete narrative of what's actually going on once we go in there, I'm going to record what happens for the next half an hour on Claude's path, and then what happens the next half an hour on Rena's path, and then I'm going to splice them all together and do post commentary on the whole thing, just because otherwise it's going to be a nightmare to try and record this all together. So anyway, you'll hear me in a second, and I will talk to you in an hour. Bye! Okay, so we're back, and for me it's the next day because it took way too long to get all that set up. So this is going to continue with Claude's path, and basically how I've edited all this stuff together, and it took quite some time to do that, is most of it is either chronologically or just for not switching back and forth 8,000 times, sake, we will follow, kind of what happens with this, and then we'll backtrack to, a few minutes before and then continue on, just to kind of give an idea of what happens. A lot of it kind of flows together, but just in terms of the way I edit it, it may seem a little bit strange. Let me know how you like how I handle this, just because I'm not sure. I'm not particularly familiar with doing post commentary. I've probably done it, 4 or 5 times so far. I do most of it live just because it's a lot easier for me, but anyway. So yeah, basically we arrive back at Rena's house, we get introduced to her mother, and she's of course very grateful for saving us. But when Claude walks through the doorway, he's actually interrupting a conversation that has already started, and in order to hear exactly what happened what happened with that conversation, we need to switch over to Rena's path. We will be doing that shortly, as soon as this scene finishes playing out. But yeah, for the most part, a lot of the plot that's going on in this particular town at the start of the game is just trying to establish the world that Ren is living in from her perspective, and for Claude's perspective, this completely alien world that he's now a part of. So at this point on Claude's path, this is when we go and do the tour of the city. I don't know why they changed the timeline here, but yeah, this is the tour that was supposed to start at the right when we got back into town on Rena's path. Speaking of Rena's path, this flows back to where we ended off the first episode there, and I probably should have cut the fact that I'm standing here for way too long, but okay, that's fine. Yeah, when that lady walks up to the river, she complains about her complexion. I don't think it really matters who is your lead character, but anyway, there's a slightly different reaction on Claude's path. She asks if Mr. Claude wants to go. This is the tour, by the way. I just skipped over all of the aspects of the tour, just because, so we could get back to that conversation I was talking about before. Yeah, like on Claude's path, that lady said something, or Rena says something about, "Ugh, let's go, Mr. Claude," instead of just "ugh" on her path. I don't know why they make those minor changes. But yeah, this is the conversation that Claude interrupts. And in order to kind of understand both perspectives in this case, we really do need to see both sides. You do get a lot of information thrown at you that's different between the two paths right off the start. And that's why I decided to use this kind of a method. Here, of course, she's talking about the fact that she's seen the warrior. She believes he is the warrior that we learned about. We learn a lot more about who this warrior is on Rena's path than we do on Claude's. And this is where Claude had walked in on his own path, interrupting that conversation. Actually, he's inside. Yeah, he's right there. Now, the ending to this sequence plays off, I think, slightly differently. But I think there's only like 1 or 2 lines of dialogue that change. It's really not particularly important. Yeah, in this case, he says, "You didn't come out," or "I just was wandering around town and I happened to get here." It's kind of weird how they make changes in the timeline and slight changes in the dialogue, even though it technically should be the same scene if we're using, it's just a different lens to view the same thing. Maybe it's, I guess, an idea of memory, each character remembers it different, though there's no point in this game where they really have the idea about, there being kind of a remembered or a framing narrative where they're trying to recall what happened. But anyway. So yeah, at this point on Rena's path, Claude has run outside and she has to go find him. Why would you get the ellipses for that line? That seems kind of weird. But okay, sure. Okay, so we're back on Claude's path, but this is basically the tour that we had started before. I decided to put it in here because chronologically it makes sense. I am going to be focusing on Claude's path more than Rena's path for the majority of the game. Rena's path I'll use to kind of delve into more of the character aspects, recruit the other characters that I won't be recruiting on Claude's path, and kind of setting things up like that. We'll also show some additional private actions. I'll get into what those are later. This is the point on Claude's path where Rena becomes an active character. Now, the way I'm having it set up, I just wanted her to do something, whether that was have sense of design as a talent, and then she can work on doing some art or some other stuff, or, which happened to be the case this time around, I happened to get both pitch and sense of rhythm. Those two together are required for most of the musical well, it's not really item creation, but the musical talent in the game. And it's a good idea to have 2 people with both. I do note that talents can be learnt in the game, but it's very random. Some characters can't learn all of them. Rena herself has the Blessing of Mana, which is the basically an ability that only mages in the game have. Fighters can never get them, but it does help with alchemy as an item creation tool, so I may end up using her for that, but I think I have another idea for it. Probably use one of the other mages that I don't use as much, so I'm not wasting Rena's points, since I will be using her for a good chunk of the game. But I do want to show off like different aspects. Like there are 3, well, if you include all of the characters who can actually heal in the game, there's technically 5, I think, healers in this game. There are only 2 that are really effective, and I'm going to show off uses for both. But for those of you who have played this game before, maybe only once a long time ago, you may think that the only good healer is Rena. That is not correct. And the first 2 times I played the game, I didn't even consider using this other character for a healer because I never recruited said character, which gives you a pretty good idea of who I'm talking about if you've played this game a few times. But anyway, we'll leave that to the side for now. But yeah, this is the point in time where Rena is active and where you can finally get her in your party on Claude's path. So make sure to check her talents at this point if you want to. I think, did we have an option to go back into the forest and save? I think you have to get both of them all in one go. Both Claude and Rena on Claude's path get both of their talents in one go, which is really difficult to do. It's kind of a pain in the ass, but oh well. Now, I can't remember when I did it in the timeline. Because this is tomorrow and I recorded this yesterday, I can't remember exactly when I did certain things. I just didn't have enough time to do, to record that day because I had plans, and I finished editing things together pretty much just in time, so lucky me. But yeah, so there are a few chests in this game, and I believe I run up here later, unless I've already done all the treasure chests in part 1. I have no idea. My sense of time is all over the place at this point. But there are 2 treasure chests upstairs in that previous house, if I haven't shown it off or if I'm going to show it off. Either way. I think I did that at the start of this episode, in fact. That's what happens when you try and do things out of order. Now, this may be rather jarring of an episode. This and the next one, there'll be 2 episodes that I'll have done like this, as that's how much I've recorded so far. I'm not going to do this for like the entirety of the game, because 1, that would be ridiculous, and 2, it would just be too difficult. But what I did want to do is kind of set how everything was going to be set up ahead of time, so we know what's going on. At the end of episode 3, there will be a point where both paths kind of go to the same point, and I'll just be doing the one of the paths just to show it off, and then we will move on, and basically the other path will do exactly the same thing, just from a different point of view. And so I'm not going to show both of them, I'll just be showing one of them. Now, after the tour, Claude goes in there, and all that basically happens as it did before. And on Rena's path, if you remember a few minutes ago, Claude decided to go, or had to go wait outside. Well, she figured things out. Her mother decided, okay, we should bring him in. You have to go talk to those kids first. I don't think you have to talk to this guy. But yeah, I'm just trying to kind of establish things. And if you're on Rena's path, you probably want to pick up a few blueberries and probably a blackberry. On Claude's path, it's not as important, but yeah, I would do that. So at this point, Rena is looking for Claude. He is wandering around here, but he won't show up unless you do 2 specific things from what I recall. The first one is talking to those 2 kids. The second is coming in here and talking to these 2. I don't know why that's the trigger, but if we come in here, we do learn about Dias Flack, who seems to be somebody that Rena knew. Apparently he's left Arlia, and something about a tragedy. Well, we will learn more about this on both paths. Surprisingly, when we learn about it is different on each path, I believe. Yeah, so yeah, I couldn't remember when I had done it, even when I was recording yesterday, so. Anyway, once you've talked to those 2 people, Claude shows up down here, we get the option, we can grab him and bring him back to the house. If we go around the barrel. There's a funny scene with a barrel later on. Anyway, at this point, once we have these 2, bring them back after being here once before, this scene will play out, and it's the same on both paths. For a little bit, anyway. I don't know why, whoever your leader is, the secondary character will walk into them, like to gather your characters, walk up the stairs, and then pop back out. It's really, really weird. Yeah, she made way too much food. Though I'm kind of hungry, so I'm not complaining. Well, that's a nice thing to do, but it's a little much. Now that you mention it, he probably hasn't eaten since... what, maybe, I guess that probably would have been this morning when they went on that away mission. But, yeah, we get some strange little emoticon things. I'm not sure exactly what you would call those. Anyway, after dinner, we have 1 hour later. because why not? Can't eat another bite. Well, leaving food would be rude. I don't know, some of the dialogue just seems really kind of weird. That mother of mine made too much. That's kind of a strange line to have. But anyway, you're glad that he liked it. But it's not like you made it. So, I don't know. This whole scene is kind of weird. A lot of the, well, I wouldn't say a lot of it, but there are a number of scenes that just come across as very awkward. Now, this is where the path splits again, and on Rena's path, we follow what she does. We will go back to see what Claude was doing up there on his own, but Rena comes down here, and she's asked to call the mayor to, I guess, talk about the fact that he might be the warrior, or to introduce him to the village. I don't know, because why not? And when we do that, we have to walk to the mayor's house, which is right across, not really the street, but across the grass. Kind of a weird town. Oh well. And there, of course, we have the old mayor, Regis Philman. Come quickly! Sometimes the music, it would make sense if the music made an abrupt switch at like a situation like that. But there are more than enough times where the music decides to abruptly switch on us as is, so I'm not going to complain that they didn't do it more. In the forest? Why were you in the forest? I don't know. That probably would be her answer. They use the word demon and monster interchangeably in this game, and it's kind of annoying because it's like, oh, they use monster throughout most of it, and then all of a sudden they'll start using demons. Like, oh, different enemy? No, it's the same enemies. It's really kind of weird how they do it. I'm not sure why they decided to use that those two words interchangeably like that. Well, I guess now we do too. Anyway, so the mayor wants to meet Claude, figure things out, listen to his story, and see if potentially he is this warrior. Now, because this is a JRPG, he probably will be, since he's the main, well, one of the main characters of this game. But yeah, once you've gathered him up, you head back to the house and just kind of pay attention to this dialogue here. What has she done? Why are you so flustered? You did it. Wait, what? What did you do? And what did you tell him? You didn't actually say much about the warrior. He didn't seem to understand. So just kind of pay attention right now, because I'm going to cut back to what happened when they split apart, because these two scenes play into each other and then they kind of work the same. Here Claude's wondering about how his mother is, realizing the fact that, crap, I'm not home and I really need to get back there. I don't even know if he's in the same solar system anymore, let alone, you know, anything else. So now he's wondering what's keeping Rena. So I'm not sure if you have to do all this, but if you go into Rena's room, you realize there's chest, and you shouldn't go into the room without permission, yet you already did. They could have just blocked off the door. And then she didn't actually say to stay upstairs. She said something about you can relax upstairs. But once you do that, go back in your room and try and leave through the doorway, then Westa will come out. I don't know if you have to do the other ones ahead of time, but I always do. Thank you for dinner. Why are you acting like a child, both of you? Yeah, she mentions, I just wouldn't know what to do if the warrior didn't like your food. That's all she said, and she said that she's told him about the warrior. She didn't tell him about the warrior. Look at this from Claude's point of view. He has no idea what the warrior is or what she's talking about. And then she's back, and then obviously because we heard this already from on Rena's path, but all of the dialogue here is the same. Claude's actually listening in and hearing, presumably because she's talking too loud, about what happened after Rena returned with the mayor. Yeah, again, the dialogue is slightly different. I don't know why. He didn't really seem to understand was repeated on both sides, though, which is true. He has no idea what you're talking about and thinks that you're all crazy. I think all of these characters are crazy, but anyway, at this point, both paths experience this part of the scene the same way for the next, 5 or 6 minutes or something like that. I realize this is another long episode, but because I basically recorded an hour's worth of content, I'm going to kind of split it up into 2 episodes. And so we're going to go through the explanation from the mayor here, and we're going to end by, after that, we go and take a nap. So basically this sets things up, and then next time we'll deal with what the fallout of all of this happens the day after. Kingdom of Cross, the continent of Lacquer. A lot of the names of the towns were changed in the PSP version, and things like the names of weapons, items, a lot of things. There was a weird translation with this version of the game. There's a weird translation with a lot of Square games anyway. But yeah, there's a lot of things, all kind of little points that I'll talk about as it goes on. But he's no simple traveler at this point. Yeah, I really should be talking about the actual plot, since this is kind of the important bit. This is what sets our whole journey in motion. Man from another world, the warrior of legend. Merely disguising yourself as a traveler to spy upon the world. Am I wrong? Well, yes. At least from Claude's perspective. Cite our local legends, which have been passed down the Armstrong line for No, stop that. It's always going to be in my head when I hear that. Wearing alien remnants shall appear, and he shall carry the sword of light. When people are suffering, he will show up. So, from their perspective, he's wearing alien clothes, not from this planet, has a sword of light, his phaser, or light gun, stun gun, whatever you want to call it. He doesn't even realize that what he has is being interpreted that way. Shoots out a dazzling beam of light. Yeah, it's not a sword, though. It's a gun, but okay, sure. No, he's the same person. He's the only one who would have one of those phaser gun thingies. Not a sword, but I do have such a weapon. Must be some sort of mistake. I'm not a warrior. I have no such power. I don't even know what's happening. And for you to suddenly ask for my help, which they haven't actually done yet. Again, the translation is so weird. Anyway, basically they're referring to the sorcery globe. The sorcery globe has occurred, and disasters are occurring throughout the world, presumably based on their limited understanding of the sorcery globe to what's going on. Anyway, because I'm kind of rambling about it, he's going to explain things properly to us. 3 months ago. And we also get a change in music, which seems weird. It's very creepy. On another continent located to the northeast of the village is the country called the Kingdom of El. One day, meteorites suddenly landed on the village of Illyria, one of the domains in the kingdom of El. I'm not going to do that every time. I just figured. At first, there was merely a fuss about it being unusual meteorite, but eventually unusual consequences began to happen. The previously peaceful kingdom began to suddenly be plagued by groups of demons, which became violent. Nothing like this had ever happened before, that is, until that meteorite fell. The sorcery globe is what they're referring to, so I think it's strange to believe that there's some connection. Came to call the fallen meteorite the sorcery globe or the stone of sorcery. No matter how I think about it, only assume that the stone is the cause of our unhappiness. Or something like that. I'd probably press the button too fast. Fell to the ground suddenly, and now you appear suddenly. If the meteorite is the source of all misfortune, then we felt that you were the only one who could put an end to them, which, from their perspective, makes perfect sense. Remember, these guys aren't the most advanced civilization in the world. Again, I'll bitch about earthquakes at another point, but yeah. Earthquakes on a planet not called Earth don't make sense. I don't care how many times people say otherwise. That's a good point. Where are you going? I did not come here of my own will, but rather I came here by accident. Think about it from their point of view. You came here by accident. How the hell did you manage to do that? You're being too vague. That's all you can say, huh? See that you really are not the word. Well, pretty much. Rena does not like this. Definitely not. It seems so. Even they're starting to think, yeah, this guy is probably not competent enough to be our legendary warrior. He doesn't even have an actual sword. At this point, Rena walks out. So this is the point where the paths kind of split again. We get like another few seconds or a minute of this dialogue is exclusive to Claude's perspective. And then we'll switch to where Rena went. One request. In the future, please avoid any actions which may be misunderstood. No! How could I possibly do that? Basically, he just means don't use your sword of light or your phaser. And because he tells us to do it, think of how long it's going to take him to completely forget that and go use it right in front of people anyway. Yeah, it's not going to be long. Not today, but not long. You'll be more careful. Basically, don't be a dick. Don't, get people's hopes up for no reason. Got it. Want to look around and see if I can find clues. At this point, Claude really has no idea what the hell he's doing. He's like, how did I get here? I have no idea how to get back. My communicator doesn't work, and that's all I know. But at least the mayor offers him a bed for the night, which is very nice to do since there's no inn in this town. And on Claude's path, you get free rest at the mayor's house. I'm not sure if you also get that in Rena's path, but this is cutting back to the scene we saw just a moment ago. This is from Rena's path, though, and Rena walks out. I just figured I'd give it perspective by showing that little bit over again. But when that happens, we don't get the additional dialogue with Claude. We go outside, and we get a little more of what happened to Rena. Anyway, that's pretty much all the time we have for today. And I'll see you guys next time.